What's up, everybody? Welcome to Value Town, episode 33. Am I right? Gosh, I always lose count. I think it's episode 33. I'm your host, ChanManV, and I'm joined by my co-host each and every week, Trump. And we got a special guest today, Admirable. What's going on? He just came off of Deck Wars with me, too. So how you guys doing today? Trump?
Doing pretty good.
Trump, you doing well?
Fantastic.
Great. Got the teddy bear, man. You're so cute all the time, man. So good, so good. But today, guys, we're gonna be talking about the new Warlock card. It always comes out right before Value Town, so it's so amazing. Actually, it came out a day earlier than the previous weeks. Get a chance to talk about that. Some new any new meta or just the meta that's going on in the new season, and we'll talk about Backspace's Rogue deck, which is this kind of new, more aggressive deck that we've been seeing on the ladder recently. Going to do some Q&A with you guys, of course. As always, submit them in the Reddit thread, which is right here. Lots of good questions already. I already looked through some of them. Should be a good time today. And then we'll finish things out, just our typical kind of shout-outs and wrap things up. So let's start off by talking about the new Warlock Nax card here. You guys get a chance to look at that?
I looked at it this morning when I woke up. You know, so I flew to California, been kind of incognito for a couple days, and wow. I think this card is busted.
Busted? Wow, okay. Let me get Trump's. Trump, what do you think about this card?
I'm not very good at the lingo. Busted means really good, I take it?
Is broken, basically. Yeah, really, really good.
Well, I mean, I think it has possibilities. I wasn't expecting it to be called busted. I thought it was situationally possibly reasonable.
Okay, reasonable. That's definitely much more tempered than busted. So, Admirable, tell me why do you think it's busted?
All right, so I think cards like Dread Infernal are already pretty good, and I think you can justify them in certain kinds of decks. The problem right now is they don't really have a spot. Like any deck you'd play Dread Infernal in, it's like, why wouldn't I just play Mountain Giant or Molten Giant instead?
Right.
That's sort of the direction that's gone. That being said, those decks are always pretty weak to aggro decks, especially like the hyper aggro ones. Like you've seen Hunter come about. You've seen again this new Rogue deck come about. These hyper aggro decks just run over Handlock. And frankly, I don't like relying on things like Molten Giant. Not that I like relying on something like this 3/4 anymore, but a couple things come into play. So number one, you can run Jiraxxus in here now, because this guy can potentially put a 3/15 from your hand into play. Dread Infernal, of course, it just accelerates you to it's a 4 mana for a 3/4 and a 6/6, which is already kind of absurd. And then even if you put something like Felguard into play, it's like not that bad of a thing. Like you can put Doomguard from your hand into play and not discard any cards from this. It's just you're seeing this card is kind of doing too much, in my opinion. When you draw it right, it's like Innervate already does a lot. You're like turn 3 Druid of the Claw. Wow, that's really good. You're like even something like turn 4. You're like, wow, he played an Ancient Allure off the coin and an Innervate. That's a big play. But if you play this guy, you just like, I'll stick the 6/6 into play. You're like, what?
Well, you have to remember this is a death rattle. This isn't a battle cry.
Is it a death rattle?
Yeah, a battle cry would be.
What the heck?
A battle cry would be insane, man.
Well, all right, ignore everything I just said. This card's pretty mediocre.
Oh boy, oh man.
Wow.
My bad.
Just one keyword change.
Did
man.
I really read that as battle cry? Holy bananas!
Yeah,
all right.
That would
you
be
guys,
insane. Okay.
This is why they pay me the big bucks. Is because you guys can see me say all kinds of stupid stuff. Like you thought I said dumb stuff while I was casting. Boy, oh boy, just wait till I evaluate cards. So, yeah, pretty mediocre.
Okay, mediocre. Trump, what kind of do you see any new decks possibly being built around this, or do you think it is, like your assessment of it was definitely more tempered? It's probably not even good enough to build a deck around.
No, this is actually exactly the card that you build a deck around.
Okay.
It's possible that this card will spawn a demon style deck. I mean, we got the Sense Demons, we got the Void Collar,
right.
We got the Void Terror eating the stuff, like eating the Void Collar. It's possible. That's why I'm tempered. It's one of those cards where you need to see it in action. I say this like almost every single time where there's a new card, but you kind of need to see the entire set and all the cards working together before you can make a judgment on this one, is my opinion.
I'm hoping there's going to be some new demons too that will be released in the neutral cards. Maybe that would, kind of make this a little bit easier to distinguish too. But a lot of the current demons, they have, most of them have setbacks, right? A lot of them are designed so that they give you a lot of value, but there is some kind of penalty to playing them, like Succubus, for instance. Felguard also, right? You actually lose a mana crystal. So having this type of just play the card type of thing, you don't actually have to intake any of those penalties, right? Is that how
Right.
it usually works,
Yeah.
right?
Battlecry effects, you have to actually
Yeah, like Alarm Bot.
pay mana crystals to play it from your hand.
Right, exactly. So Admirable, now that you know that's the death rattle, what do you think?
Um, well, Trump pretty much hit the nail on the head. Stuff like Void Terror, I think, is a possibility with a card like this.
Yeah.
Power overwhelming it, not a bad play. You get some, you have something to power overwhelming, and you don't really lose an effect till you get to replace it. The problem is you still lose a card, but potential to unlock some things there. Also, a good point is you really need to see all the other cards in context to be able to accurately evaluate something that is a death rattle instead of a battle cry effect. So I think it'd be interesting. Like, I still think that the Baron Rivendare, is that the name?
Yeah.
The legendary doubles all your battle cries.
Mm-hmm.
I still think that guy's going to be interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if you see something like that. Because again, if you eat this guy with a Baron in play, I mean, it's like 2 guys on the board. Crazy.
Oh my
acceleration
gosh.
effects.
Which one do you kill, actually? Gosh, I mean, of course, that'd be crazy to have like 2 Infernals actually pop
Well, you
up on the
don't
board.
want to kill the 3/4, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So
That's kind of cool. There's more
yeah.
more minions like that. More minions.
There's a lot to be said about giving that guy taunt too. Like, nobody wants to attack that guy.
Yeah, that's true.
So
Okay, it's going to be interesting. In it's kind of funny because Warlock already is arguably the most diverse class. I mean, we have 2 very very popular decks that are vastly different than each other. You know, one's like heavy control, the other is heavy aggro. And then now they're giving the ability to maybe make yet a 3rd type of archetype for Warlock. So all those Warlock players, lucky fools out there. Definitely. Okay, well, good stuff. Hopefully we'll get a chance to see some more, some more cards in the near future. I think we're down to the Priest and I think just the Priest, right? Is that the last card?
Hunter.
And the Hunter. Oh yeah, the Hunter. Yeah, the Hunter is the one I'm waiting for, man. I want to see what they end up coming up with that. But hopefully that will come out in the next 2 weeks. We'll take a look at that. Obviously, we'll discuss it too on Value Town whenever it comes out. But okay, let's move on to meta talk. And the last week of meta kind of covers the end of last season and the first week of this season, obviously. But I think we're starting to see a few new decks pop up. One of the ones is the Backspace Rogue, which we'll discuss here in just 1 second. But seeing some other decks like Mage back, Freeze Mage back actually, and even some other variants too. So I kind of want to get your opinions on what you think meta was like at the end of the season 2, and then obviously season 3 here. Trump, what do you think?
I think the end of the season ended with quite a lot of diversity, but ultimately it ended up being that Miracle Rogue, I think, ended up being the deck to beat, at least in the really top level. And then there were a lot of decks which were okay against Miracle or even slightly favored against Miracle, and then just okay against everything else.
Yeah, Admirable, what do you think?
again, pretty much nail on the head. I think Miracle was easily the deck to beat. It was just so powerful. Again, at least at the top end, it was so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
It was hard to justify not playing it, honestly, from a lot of players' positions. Right. So because of the top end, it became such a predictable thing to face. Like when you're playing against the top 50 guys, it's like over half of them are playing Miracle Rogue, and rightfully so. It was easy to target at the end, and that's where you started to see the new developments, where this aggro rogue started to rear its ugly head.
So in this new season, are you guys still seeing a ton of Miracle Rogue?
I've seen a lot less Miracle Rogue. Like I haven't played too much, but I probably played like, I don't know, 50, 60 games.
Yeah.
I've seen way more Zoo than I expected to.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
Like and I just outside of the Zoo, it's like just almost random what you play against. Like I've played against every class so far in like 60 games, which is a little bit strange. But you are climbing through ranks. So there are a lot of people who just play what they want to play, which is fine. There's always a lot to be said from just having fun. It is a game after all.
Oh, absolutely.
So I actually have been playing a lot of Warrior in that regard, just because I wanted to be able to flexibly fight all of these slew of decks that are being thrown at me.
Okay, Trump, what are you saying?
Yeah, I mean, starting off the season, it always feels really different because you aren't facing the you aren't necessarily facing the caliber of players that you would face near the end of the season when the ranks are more clearly cut.
Mhm.
That said, I have faced off against those new decks, the Freeze Mage and the uh, really fast Rogue deck.
Mhm.
Let's see. There's also something else. I've seen a few of the super aggro paladin also, the Divine Favor, the
Yeah.
Shakatin, I believe,
Shocking.
and
That's right. That's
there
right.
has been a lot of Zoo, and the Zoo surprises me a bit since it's kind of weak against Miracle Rogue, but then again, it doesn't surprise me because it's a good deck for climbing quickly, kind of.
Yeah.
Although I don't think the win rate is that good with it, you can play games really fast with it.
Has anybody ever done a time analysis on that? Because I agree with you, Trump. The reason I think a lot of people play Zoo is just time, trying to be time efficient and just pumping out as many games as possible, right, with the Zoo deck. But I wonder if there's been anybody has done analysis, at least personally, to kind of measure that out. Because I don't know, maybe the trend would actually be a little bit different than most people would expect. Between Handlock and Zoo, I think the Warlock is, for me at least, it's been like 40-50% of like what I've seen so far in early ladder. It's been crazy
Wow.
for me. Yeah, it's been crazy. And then Miracle is probably the next one after that. But that's just my experience.
That's
It's
kind of unlucky.
I know, isn't it? Kind
Like
of
I played
crazy.
against everything. The Shakanin deck, I wanted to touch on that actually.
Yeah. What do you think
Because
of
I
that?
was playing against someone who just was like turn 4 Hammer Wrath you. And I was like, what?
I know,
Silver
right?
Champion attack you. And they're
Tennis,
like,
baby.
Argent Commander attack. And I was like, this is kind of a weird Paladin deck. So I didn't actually know what it was. So I was like really taking my time and like thinking through everything. And I was like, I guess I just have to play it really efficiently. Armor up
Yep.
a lot and make sure I take care of everything. And in the end, I was really confused as to what its goal was. And I was like, the only thing I could put together was I was like, you have to have 2 copies of Avenging Wrath in your deck. It's the only thing that really makes sense at this point. So I don't think it's good, but I don't think it's bad. It's pretty close to being able to be a good deck, but it's like Paladin's one of those classes where it's so reactive right now that it's hard for it to be a good deck because I think that as I play more Hearthstone, it's more like chess than it is like Magic, where it's like you're
Really?
looking for like combinations of pieces to attack your opponent, and you're trying to get a big setup turn, and like instead of like in Magic where you just wait and like blow up all their key cards and pick them apart and then have like one problematic guy. It's like in this one you're like constantly fighting to set up your opponent for a kill.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of like the way chess is working. Like you just develop your pieces and then you're like, okay, now I have this big
Yeah,
sequence of
that's a
turns
good
where I attack.
analogy. Yeah.
So in that regard, I think Paladin's weak because it's basically just reactive.
That's kind of bad. I've been trying to play Paladin this season too.
Yeah, you would.
I'm just a glutton for punishment, man. So yeah, I'm trying to make it work, but I'm trying to make it work with a less reactive type of Paladin, more of a mid range type of, you call it Strifecrow like kind of deck, that sort of thing. So it's definitely less reactive.
Definitely 2 Harvest Golems then.
Yeah, 2 Harvest Golems, 2 Yetis. I mean, lots of stuff like that. But it's been tough with Zoo and Miracle Rogue. Trump, what are you playing right now? Early stages.
In the beginning of the season, I was trying some sort of hybrid druid where it was ramp and token mixed together. So you would
Okay.
have the Violet Teacher and the Power of the Wild, but you'd also
Yeah.
have the Ancient of War. So it was pretty interesting. But then I switched over to the deck that Strifecrow used to win the latest Tavern Takeover, his druid deck. It's very solid. It's just a lot of very sturdy minions. And speaking of which, I've seen a lot of druid this season too. Like, one thing about the metagame, I wanted to point out. Unfortunately, I've since lost the link, but there was a Reddit thread where there's a guy who posted like the stats pie chart of all the classes he
Oh
faced. It was
yeah, I
really
saw that too.
interesting
That was
because
yesterday. Yeah.
oh yeah, there were
me
so
see
many
that.
classes represented, and like no single pie was over I think 20 or 25%.
Mhm.
So it was a good metagame that month. A lot of diversity. All the classes were represented, and with the exception of priest.
Priest is never represented.
I sort of want to touch on that. I think a lot of that play, honestly, is because people are just sick of playing like the most powerful deck all the time. I think that there's a lot of people who they don't want to play the most powerful deck. There's something to be said about the appeal of being able to know that you're maybe even at a slight disadvantage and being able to overcome that. I think even from a lot of top players, like I know a lot of people who are or strong
Wow, you
legend
think?
players, but they'll play decks that are purposely like seeded poorly versus the field just to try to overcome it, just because it's fun for them to do.
Wow. Okay. I mean, that's not the typical approach you'd take if you want to finish top 16.
I agree with you, but I think there's a lot of people who do that,
Hmm. Okay.
which is I think is sort of reflected in the fact that every class is represented on that pie chart. Like I just can't imagine playing like Paladin
Well,
ever.
I
Ladder.
mean, I don't think it being only prevalent in the top ranks, it would affect the pie chart like that. I mean, I think the pie obviously represents all ranks, and maybe a lot of the diversity happens a little bit more at the lower ranks than the the higher ones. Because
Sure.
I don't know, I barely even saw Hunter in Legend at the end of the season.
Yeah, I didn't see any.
There's some classes I just barely even saw. So maybe in the lower ranks it was better. What do you think about the freeze mage? Because I was going to have Otter on here too to talk about it. Maybe we can have him on next week. But what do you think about his mage deck? Actually, Trump, let me ask you if you're familiar with it at all.
Are we talking about the freeze mage deck?
Yeah, the freeze mage with the two Azure Drake.
Okay. There's two main variations on it. One's giants and one's the ice lance yo face at the end game. I think both kind of fit in the same general category. So addressing both of those, they happen to be good against like three of the main. They happen to have a what I would consider above a 50% win rate against three of the top dogs right
Mm-hmm.
now,
Yeah.
which are Miracle Rogue, Zoo, and Handlock. So
Yep.
that makes it a very appropriate choice right now.
Okay, Admirable, what do you think of it?
Again, nail on the head. I think that it's really solid against Miracle Rogue. Between ice blocks and ice barriers, you can really stave off a lot of damage.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the addition of Azure Drake, the Ice Lance versions anyway, is something that's very important. Like that card it's almost a 4/4 taunt because nobody wants to let it live because they're like, this could potentially deal a lot of damage.
Yeah.
So it's like between ice barriers and Azure Drakes, and even Mirror Entity, you're
Yeah.
able to absorb a lot of damage and then sort of make your push to the end game. And a deck like Zoo's going to rely on being able to consistently use its damage from its minions. It wants repetitive damage. So when you have cards like Blizzard and Frost Nova and Flamestrike, it's really easy to offset that. And against Handlock's looking at its first plays at turn 4.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, Mage is like, well, I can just use my single freeze effects on these and wait the game out and continue to just do what I do. And then again, between ice blocks and ice barriers, you're able to live long enough to just push through damage.
Yeah.
And Handlock's plan sort of working right into yours, where you're looking to burst them for 15 plus in one turn, and they're looking to life tap every single turn to keep their
Right.
options open. But none of their options are very good because you're not doing anything.
And there's nothing to siphon either, so
Right.
it can be really tough. I mean, there's been a lot of turns because I played it a lot in the last couple of days of the season, and yeah, there's turns where you're just like, I don't want to throw anything out there because I don't want him to be able to siphon anything, so I can burn him down. Kind of fun, but it's great. I love the freeze mage the first time around. Just in the beta, right? Whenever it was really really powerful.
2 mana
And
Frost Nova.
yeah, and I was really bummed whenever the nerf seemed to have made it, just really took the fangs out of it, and it just was gone. So seeing it kind of come back, have some relevancy, I think is really, really great. Really cool. Great for Mage, absolutely. Having one of the major mechanics be relevant, the freeze mechanic. So hopefully it'll continue to develop. I still think the deck is still early on in its development and can be refined even more. So good stuff. Definitely good stuff. But meta-wise, I think I don't know, that's about all, right? That with any new decks outside of those Shakadin, Rogue, and Mage deck?
I haven't seen much
I haven't
else.
seen Zadalot's Priest much lately or anything like that.
I mean, there's just been so many small adjustments being made.
Yeah.
Like Miracle Rogue sometimes runs Tazdingo now. The return of the Yeti, like you're
Yeah.
seeing a lot more of it now. Probably as a response to Miracle Rogue, you need to start beating their face in consistently with a big guy. You see Novice Engineer, it's making a
Mm-hmm.
comeback, mostly because of Miracle Rogue, but actually just because of Miracle Rogue. And they're just trying out new cards and things twist and turn a little bit every day.
Yeah, totally. What do you guys think of Shaman right now?
Shaman's sort of in the position it's always been in, where it's like, when you get the right matchups, it's a really good deck, but in the really poor matchups, it's a really poor deck.
Yeah.
That deck has a really hard line to it. It's like, I don't feel like its matchups are really close, honestly. I think it's either pretty favored or pretty underdogs.
Okay. Trump, what do you think?
I don't hold quite as a extreme an opinion, but I do agree it's kind of the middle deck right now. It's like it's okay. I can't. It's strange because I can't say much more out of it. Like it's really good against Handlock, and then against everything else, it's kind of okay.
Yeah.
It's really bad against Miracle Rogue. That's about it.
Okay. Well, that's gonna, I guess, maybe wrap up our meta segment here. But another great season. A lot of crazy, crazy competitive play at the end of it. I think overall we got 14 new legends in NA, and how many in EU? Let's see. I forget how many new ones we got in EU here. Looking at the block.
I actually still haven't seen the top 16 from EU. Like I said, I've been sort of incognito. I saw the NA one this morning. I didn't see it.
Yeah, basically Hyped and Backspace, didn't get credit for it, but some of our, some of the people that you'd recognize in the list: Puffin, Renad, Otter, Savitz, Battle Tag. I mean, some of these others, if you're a ladder warrior, you've seen a lot of these guys,
Yep.
but those are probably the most famous guys from there. And then the EU, actually, where's the EU list? I can't find the EU list here. Trying to find it here. Actually, this would probably do it. I just want to see who else. I didn't actually get a look at the EU list.
I actually didn't know Savitz could qualify for the North America one.
That's a good point, actually.
That was something I was looking at. As far as I understood from reading the rules, is when you qualify for a region, you have to choose which one you want.
Yeah,
to represent.
Oskaka qualified for both this season.
Right, so he's got to choose which one he wants, and then
Mhm.
they pass down from there. So
Okay.
they're not just gonna give Savitz 2 spots and then be block someone out of it.
Yeah,
It's he has to choose which one, and then they'll hand it down from there.
yeah.
So you notice last season, Hyped had again he was number 2 and 3. They actually paid to 17 effectively, or they actually
That's
paid
good
to
news to
17.
number 19 on the list, huh?
That's right,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
right? So this actual highlighted list here might might get updated, actually.
Yeah,
So
it just depends on what's going on.
Yeah, let me show you guys, actually.
I know you can only
Showing.
represent one region. It just wouldn't make sense to be able to represent 2. It'd just be unfair.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so here are here's the rankings of those of you that didn't see. Kalento number 1 again. Kalento's so. I mean, has Kalento finished out of the top 5 in any of the seasons?
Depends on which server you're talking about.
Well, EU.
I haven't really kept up too much.
Yeah,
in
here's
stuff.
an NA one, guys. So take a look at it. But yeah, anyway, successful season, and we only have 3 more seasons left to go, guys, to qualify for the World Championship qualifying tournament. So definitely get in there. There's a lot of tournaments out there too that allow you to qualify for it too. So be sure to look out for that. I think Tavern Takeover, which Admirable you're part of, I think is one of those tournaments. A lot of the ESL tournaments and the weekly so I think a good number of the weekly tournaments are doing it too. And hopefully I'll be doing an event 2 in July that will also feed into it. So really kudos to Blizzard for working with a lot of the tournament organizers to allow us to be part of that storyline, which is really, really great.
God,
Yeah.
100K.
Furthermore, way to go, Kalento. One of the lesser known things about this is that I think the top 2 of people who do well in the ladder consistently just get seeded directly to BlizzCon. So,
exactly.
It's a big deal that he was number 1 and number 1 again. Or I don't know what he was last season, but I know it was pretty high. And number 1 here, so he's looking to lock that in, I assume.
Yeah.
They get seeded directly to group stage. 'Cause
Yeah.
there's
How many slots get seeded?
2 from each region, I think.
Okay.
And I think 1 from some of the other regions. Backspace is doing a good job too. He was 12th last season, and he was second. I'm sorry, he was 12th 2 seasons ago, and he was second last season.
Yeah.
And I don't think that there was anyone from the top 16 other than him that has another top 16 finish.
Yeah, I mean, Hyped is number 17 here, so he's pretty close too.
So Hype's got a 2 and a 17.
Yeah, Murgle is not. Yeah, he finished really high last season, but I don't see him here. So
Yeah, he was number 1 in the first place season, and then this season I don't think he did so well.
yeah,
Sometimes you just have a bad luck on the last day.
yeah. The ladder is brutal. I mean, there's a question that I was gonna kind of wait for, but yeah, the last day or 2, or just in general, the ladder push. We were talking to Reynat about it a little bit last week, Trump. That you have to win how many games in a row just to even get into top 25, top 16, and then you just lose one. You drop 120 spots or something crazy like that when you lose. So it's
Well,
such a It's such
It's
a brutal. Well, actually, Admirable, you should tell. I mean, you have experience finishing number 3, so.
Yeah, it sort of depends on your MMR. Like if you have a really high win rate going into it, it's kind of easy to climb. Like I know that I was winning like close to, I was winning approximately 70% of my matches, which is like
Wow.
a lot. So
Yeah.
like I was like 600 the morning of the last day, and I won like, I don't know, I think I went like 9-2, and then I was like in the 200 range.
Yeah.
And then I went like 4-1, and I was like in the 50 range. And then after that, it was like when I would win, I would climb like 11 spots, and when I'd lose, I would drop like 4. So
Oh,
at
that's
19
it? Wow.
at 19 there was a really big hill because of the way the MMR was working. So like you would hit 19, and then you would win and you would be 19. And then you would win and you'd be 19. And then you would win and you'd be 18, and you're like, what's going on? And then you would win and you'd go to like 11. And then if you lost, you would go to like 12, and then if you lost, you'd go to like 29.
Right.
But like 19 was like where this severe hill was. So like you hit 19, you'd literally have to win like 3 or 4 in a row to get over the hill point. But 11 wasn't safe. There was so much movement at the top end. It was like the night before I went to bed, and I was like 5th or 6th when I went to bed, and I woke up and I was like 14th, and I was like, what? I was like, how could 9 people have passed me or whatever it was, like just the night of? It was like one sleep. So I played that morning, and then like I lost probably like I probably lost 7 in a row, and then 7 like put me in the pit. And I was like, oh my gosh, how do I get out of the pit now? But like 70% sort of the matter. If you win 70%, you're going to climb a ladder. It doesn't matter what position you are. If you win 70% of your games, you are going to climb. Just end of story.
Yeah. What do you think about it being less transparent? Like it doesn't actually show you what that score is that you need.
It needs to be more transparent. Like, because it's so hard to judge like where you're at. Like if there was like a point system, like say you're like Challenger, for instance, in League, they have like the Challenger points.
Mm-hmm.
So like you can see how many points you're winning and losing, and you can see where you actually stand. So like if you want to go second to first to be like locked up safe, because I know Puffin even moved out of like second place at one point, I think, this season. Like he was like at second and got moved. You're like, what? So if you can see that you're like 1,000 points away from first, you don't have 16th safe. Like I don't know. Like you could be 50,000 points ahead of 17th place and not know it.
Right.
Or you could be 1 point ahead and not know it. Like just like where are you? All I know is that I'm 16th. So
yeah,
they need to do something, because there obviously is some sort of system involved with it, because you can see your MMR develop.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you can't actually see it develop. You have to like feel it out. It's sort of weird.
Yeah,
But
Trump.
it needs to be transparent.
Trump, what do you think? I mean, what was your experience this season with trying to climb?
My experience was that the highest I made it to was 30, and then I started being a mad scientist on trying to figure out how to beat Miracle Rogue, and then I got to like rank 1,000 or something.
Yeah.
So after that, I was like, I give up. But this season, I'm going to make another serious attempt at it. I was talking to Savitz actually, and he had this miracle run of like 19 wins to get up to this place, like 19 wins in a row, 19-0, which is quite amazing.
That's pretty impressive. 19 in a row. Wow. At the end, or just to get
At the end,
established?
yeah.
Oh wow.
At the final day.
Do you know what you started at?
I going off of memory, it was somewhere in the hundreds.
Like just actual like 100 or like
I don't know if it was 200 or if it was 500, and it was one of those two.
Somewhere in the 3-digit range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. 19 in a row.
Yeah.
Gosh, it had to be like 600-ish.
Mm.
I think it's pretty reasonable.
19 in a row though. That's crazy. Even in the 600-ish. Okay. Was he playing Miracle the whole time, Trump? Do you know?
Hearsay is that he was.
Okay. All right. Well, anyways, hopefully good luck to everybody this season. And, of course, we got a few weeks to go, but it should be fun. Hopefully we'll see a little bit less of Miracle this season. I at least personally, I'd like to see a little bit less, and at least at the top, because, again, I think that most of the people in the top 16 were playing Miracle.
Yep. All
right, let's move on and talk about a different rogue deck. We'll talk about the Backspace's rogue deck here. And let me show you guys it. Okay, and if you guys were watching Deck Wars before this, we actually saw this, Hyped played this type of deck. It's maybe not exactly the same, but it was pretty similar to it. And the whole premise of this deck is to be super, super aggro, like probably trying to do as much damage as you can. In some ways, trying to kill your opponent by turn 7, turn 8 type of strategy. And what are your thoughts on this? I'll get Admirable's thoughts first.
Well, the deck obviously is aimed at Miracle Rogue.
Yeah.
It's basically just reckless. So one of the things that Miracle Rogue doesn't deal with very well is recklessness. You can just kind of throw a bunch of damage at their face and win the game. So a lot of times stuff like Cold Light Oracle comes into a huge effect because you're trying to reach such a low critical mass that you just don't care if you give your opponents cards. You've been so reckless in the early game that 4 to 8 more points of damage is really all you need. And with stuff like Cold Bloods and Eviscerates and even like Shadow Steps and Arcane Golems, you're looking at being able to achieve that very easily. So it falls, in my experience, to Zoo really hard. Any sort of early consistent pressure is really, really bad for you.
Mm-hmm.
But if your opponent's playing any sort of a slower game, it's really easy to push through it. Like against Giants, it was easy to deal them 15 to 18 points of damage really quickly and then just burn them out between like a Sap and then an Eviscerate or something. But against decks that are reliant on just having a more powerful game plan in terms of like scaling to the mid game, they're really easy to pick apart just because you have so much damage early on.
Okay, Trump, what are your thoughts on this deck?
It reminds me of the old Face Hunter deck where I would play a lot of these kind of slower decks. I was facing a lot of Hunter when I was playing Shaman, and there's always the dread moment when on turn 4, like either their turn 4, your turn 4, you'd be at 15 health. This deck kind of does the same thing. It's not unimaginable for you to be at 15 health if you don't match their early plays too much, and then from there they just push you over with whatever they have left. And that's pretty much how the deck plays. It will often come down to it doing near exactly 30 damage and no cards left in hand. So they get to be pretty close. I think a genius innovation is that Cold Light Oracle. Since you don't care if your opponents get 2 cards, you just finish them with it. It's pretty, it's a innovation I've seen in quite a few of these super aggro decks. This deck, the Miracle Rogue deck, even some other decks which are super aggro.
Yeah, I agree with that because one of the weaknesses we've seen in some aggro decks like Warrior deck is card draw, right? And adding 2 Cold Lights gives you that extra 4 card draw there and just really keeps your momentum going. Since the Rogue doesn't have like a hero power like the Warlock where you can just continue drawing cards. So is there a card in this deck? I know Admiral, you played this deck some. Is there a card in this deck that really gives you a huge advantage? Not just like your typical maybe let Gnome start or that sort of thing.
King Mukla is pretty crucial to the deck.
Okay.
One of the things that I noticed was happening is like against Druid especially, you play King Mukla, and they get 2 bananas. Obviously, they don't have time to play the bananas.
Yeah.
So then after that, like on turn 4, you're like Cold Light Oracle, and like they'll burn a card from the Cold Light Oracle, and then you're like, well, I still need cards, and you just shadow stuff the Cold Light Oracle and you just jam it down.
Wow.
And so like you end up with like 9 cards in your hand and a Mukla on the board, and they're just like, I have 2 bananas in my hand, and all my stuff costs 4 and 5 mana. And after that, it is ridiculous because after that you're like 3 1-drops, Cold Blood, Sap your guy, or whatever. And they're like, this is the worst position I've ever been in my entire life. Another one of the big ones is sometimes you just leave the Cold Light Oracle there. They'll play like a Druid of the Claw. You Cold Light Oracle to fill up their hand, and then you just sap their Druid of the Claw. And it just gets burned because they have 10 in their hand because they can't play the bananas and stuff. And then Mukla continues to deal damage. Like I've had games where Mukla's dealt 15 damage.
Oh,
and I played it, and it's just on the back of being able to recharge with Cold Light Oracle every single time. So if that's actually one of the more key cards of the deck. Like I was pretty surprised when Hype didn't have it in his list because of like Shadow Step is one of these tools that it's giving you a lot of options, and Cold Light Oracle with the way that this deck is built is just perfect. Like when you draw it with Mukla, it's really easy to burn cards. Especially, it's easy to kill minions with Sap too because once they have 10 in their hand, you sap something, it just dies. So that was a really big push for Giants. Like against Giants, it was easy to burn stuff, and like sometimes you would just burn so many actual relevant cards from their deck that they just were at such a big disadvantage because their density of important draws were gone.
So fun doing that too, man. So fun getting your opponent to burn cards.
So Mukla, I think, is like one of these cards in the deck where it's like, if I don't have Mukla, what do I replace it with? And the answer is, you replace
something
dollars
else
in your wallet with Mukla into your Hearthstone account because it's just the only matchup I'm dissatisfied with Mukla in is Shaman because it gets hexed so often.
Okay.
But outside of that, it was just Mukla. I felt like was one of the most important cards. Like probably more important than Leroy, honestly.
Wow, that's saying a lot actually, because Leroy, still is a potential big finish with this deck too.
Right.
All right, Trump. Any thoughts and anything that stick out to you? At least your experience playing against it, or have you played this deck at all, Trump?
I haven't played it, but I've had it played against me. I happen to be running a. I think Drew does alright against it.
Yeah.
Just because you can innovate out stuff, sometimes you get ahead of them. Like the key against this deck is if you ever end up on a board state where you have a better board than theirs is, then basically they lose. But that's really hard to happen since this is a really fast deck. They play like a turn one Argent Squire. It's really hard to remove that, and then
Yeah.
you play like you're always going to play from behind typically, but those times where you can be ahead because of an innovator or something, then you just win. Or if you're playing a board control deck, which is like this deck but just slightly slower and has ways to deal with faster stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, it's just they're typical to the face deck
All right, gotcha.
with some cool tricks.
Yeah, cool tricks. What do you guys think of the Fairy Dragon?
I actually did cut Fairy Dragon,
Hmm.
and I was in favor of one Sinister Strike, and that was just sort of a metagame thing. I kept playing against decks
Sinister
where like
Strike. Okay.
I was running out of reach. And they weren't removing my minions. I was just like running out of reach, and so eventually I would just drop Fairy Dragon. And I'm like, because I just need 3 more points of damage. So I literally just took it out and put in a Sinister Strike, and then the Sinister Strike was pretty good because, believe it or not, I think one of the weaker cards in the deck is SI7 Agent. Because you're burning your stuff so quickly early on that you never can combo it.
Right.
I just played as a
Right.
3-mana 3/3. So with Sinister Strike, I found myself being able to. I was just like turn 4. I'm like Sinister Strike and play SI7 Agent.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I would copy that was working out, but I'm not like my heart's not set on Sinister Strike. It's really easy to cut, and this is one of those decks where like changing 1 or 2 cards really changes what you're focusing on beating.
Yeah. Trump, thoughts on Fairy Dragon?
Yeah, I mean, Fairy Dragon's really good against Miracle Rogue. You can't backstab it, and they can't eviscerate it. I think it's varyingly good in matchups. Druids can't Wrath it.
Yeah.
I think those are the 2 main things. You can't get Soul Fired with it. But yeah, it's strong against some matchups and weaker against some. I would almost consider running 2. It depends on what you expect to face, I think.
Okay. Well, good stuff. Hopefully you guys can try it out on ladder. Just take a look at this deck, build it, try it out. It's always good to play all these decks that we talk about and understand them even more so than just listen to our opinions on them. But we're gonna go ahead and go into Q&A, but we're gonna take a quick break before we do that. Make sure you get your questions in on the Reddit thread, which I will post again here, and we'll read them out. But we'll be right back, guys. We'll take a quick break.